Dave Brat joining us now, Republican Congressman, 7th District, Virginia. Dr. Brat, good to have you with us. Let's get to the comment you made the other day that the liberal media has all picked up and said that you don't want to have town hall meetings because women get in your grill. I know what you meant by that, but can you elaborate, Congressman, on what you meant by that statement?
Oh, yeah, and I didn't, I don't want to repeat it, but I didn't say what you want to say. I would never say I don't want to have town hall meetings. And so that's the Saul Alinsky tactic of the progressive left, right? Just so you get it straight, what do? You attack your opponent at their greatest strength. And this is all in writing. And everybody should go out and Google a document called Indivisible. That's the nationwide far-left Democrat plan by Soros. And go Google Soros' World War II associations while you're at it, just to get at that. And then go out and view a document called Resistance. So what happened was I had 10 progressive leftists show up at a private meeting, take my words, to a group that knows full well what's going on politically. And so what's going on is we had a bunch of progressive leftist agenda, just marches on the nation, the women's march after that. And so I got it wrong with my exact statement. What I should have said is the progressive left is up in my grill, right? That we have nationwide. I got 35,000 hits during my first Facebook town hall. That's not my neighbors just checking in with their concerns on Obamacare, right? These liberals were nowhere to be found 2 years ago when I had hundreds and hundreds of public meetings in every county, everywhere you could go.
Right.
And then the press, of course, the fake news comes in and adds to this hype, right? They don't report on anything I've done over the past 2 years, no news at all. And then in 2 weeks, we get what? They report on these kind of statements coming out of the progressive left. And so I have always done more interviews than anyone and town halls and meet with business groups, church groups, every group that wants to meet. So they attack me on accessibility. They attack Rob Whitman next door on his military experience. Of course, that's his strong point. Out in California, the police had to come and escort one of my colleagues, out of a meeting because the progressive left, their goal isn't to bring up policy. They never go into any policy. If you look at all the arguments, right, it's just these bumper sticker attacks being funded by the hard progressive left. And so I'm not going to give them their due on these statements, right? I've been the most successful congressman around. I always look forward to meeting with my constituents, but going into this kind of turmoil right now is just it's just too much. And then our senator made a comment, right, and the media, my Richmond Times-Dispatch and the Washington Post, etc., don't do the full reporting on any of this context. Right? This is what's going on in the news across the country. They just quote one little phrase for me totally out of context, and then they don't really report on our U.S. senator who says we need to take the fight out in the streets. Right? We need to fight here, we need to fight there, and then we need to bring the fight out into the streets. It's just amazing what has degenerated in this country. And so I always look forward to getting out and meeting with people. It's all on my Facebook. Anyone can go out there and check it out. And again, when you get 35,000 hits on a Facebook in a half hour, that's just not your normal constituents looking for good policy dialogue.
Well, that's not
orchestrated.
That's
big
not
time.
people, Congressman Brat. That's not people in your 7th district. That's not even people in Virginia. This is an organized effort from the whatever it is they call them now, the Trump resistance or whatever. But look, I thought when you made that statement, I defended you the next day. I said, look, I know Congressman Brat. He's accessible. He'll talk to anybody. He's had, I think in Virginia, you have had more town hall meetings than anybody since you've been there. You'll meet and talk to anybody. So I think that was taken out of text. But so that our audience knows, Representative Tom McClintock, who was from Sacramento on Saturday, had a town hall meeting, and it was just, he had all these people from different areas, not in his district, descending on this, shouting him down, threatening to riot because he is a Republican and he was defending Trump. And so his point is, look, If I have a town hall meeting, it's for people that I represent. It isn't for people that are outside of the area to come in and just make matters worse for everybody else that is actually interested in having a dialogue, right? And then he had to be
right.
protected by the state police.
Right, and the most clear way to see it is, right, all my town halls I've had meeting after meeting after meeting for the last 2 years, and folks, usually mostly conservatives come, and a wide open, I always do Q&A for half an hour, and I'm the last guy in the room to stay, as opposed to the old model where, politicians couldn't wait to get out of the room. And so all this has changed, and then the press doesn't do any homework on this kind of stuff, right? So Trump wins the election, and then you have Christmas break and the holidays, and then the accusation, I guess, is I haven't done a town hall in the last 2 weeks in every county or something, right? When we're up there with the busiest agenda that you could ever see. And that is what they're upset about. Trump really is bringing change to Washington, and the progressive left is very upset. And so but even in the critique, right, there's some hype on Obamacare, et cetera, but there's never an alternative proposal. It's just everybody wants, the progressive left wants more of central government and big government at every turn. And that's the debate.
Well, look, the other thing you mentioned is Junior Senator Tim Kaine, ran for vice president, says on a Sunday talk show, we need to take the fight to the streets. What exactly did he mean by that?
Well, what he means is, and it's all over Politico and all the news blogs, the papers this morning, everybody right now on the Democratic side has to show absolute war against the new president because they're scared of their next primary, right? So they're all talking about their votes on blocking every single secretary, right? They critique against Republicans where we were obstructionists last year or 2 years ago or whatever, and now the Democrats won't allow any secretaries through. And so simultaneously people want to know, what are you going to do on Obamacare? And the front page of Politico says, we can't really answer until you put Tom Price, our secretary, in place, right? That's when we'll firm up our position. And so the progressive left, they know we're going to get all of our candidates through because we have the votes to do it. And so,
right.
But they're just showcasing for politics. They're not helping the country to make progress. They're holding us back at every turn. And so no one has a credible alternative to Obamacare. The cost curve's going up 20%. The deductibles are $5,000. All the promises, you won't lose your doctor, you won't lose your insurance carrier, you won't lose this, all of them were not true. It was going to end the emergency room medical care. It hasn't done that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just go around the world on every other issue, too. And so they're not happy that their agenda didn't work. And I think what they're really most scared of is that I think we will be very successful. I talked with one of the leading Harvard economists in the country last week on the corporate tax rate reduction, and he said his estimates show that the average American is going to get an 8% wage increase coming out of this, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a model, that's a hope, but boy, if we get anywhere near that, right, if you get back to 4% GDP growth and anywhere from 5 to 8% wage growth for the average worker who hasn't seen a wage increase in 30 years, it's over, right? If we get that done alone, by reducing regulations, lowering the corporate rate, lowering the individual rate, it's over. We're going to have a new 30-year run of growth.
Congressman, I think you hit the nail on the head. The real fear that the Democrats have is how successful the Republicans and the Trump administration is going to be going into the midterms and then going into 2020. And instead of celebrating that for the good of America, they have this resistance effort that just doesn't make any sense because they're resisting everything he does. It doesn't matter what he does. I'll give you an example. Your colleague just got elected. He's been in office for 1 month. My congressman, 4th District, Don McKeechin, came from the state Senate. I don't know what Don has done. I don't know what he's done for his constituents, but I get an email a day from him blasting Trump if he went to the bathroom. And it doesn't matter what he does. So it's like, okay, I've elected this guy to do what? Send me an email a day blasting Trump? I mean, what has he done? I think this is really going to blow up in their face, and it's going to backfire over time. But I think, Congressman Dave Brat, you hit the nail on the head. The fear is not to resist Trump. It's that he's going to be unbelievably successful for Americans. Congressman, let's get to Iran. President Trump's decision Friday to slap new sanctions on them immediately. What did you make of that, sir?
Well, I agree with this new pivot again, and I think you got it right there on the success piece. Here's more success coming, and you've interviewed me over the past 2 years. All we talk about is policy, right? I never talk about politics. So the only reason we're covering that ground is because of the explosion on the progressive left side. And same thing when it comes to Iran. On the policy side, I was one of 20 votes who voted against, and the whole Congress, against the Corker-Cardin-Iran deal. And I was in agreement with Netanyahu, and a lot of folks just kind of did the old status quo. And I thought it would be a disaster based on all the facts, right? Nukes after 10 years, ICBMs after 10 years. It's just a disaster in writing. And this is from, I think, the State Department #1 state sponsor of terror countries, right? I mean, they're in the top few at a minimum. And so I'm glad we're putting the heat back on them. We're putting sanctions on them. And then I heard right after that they misbehaved again, then do more sanctions, right? And
right.
We need to have these countries internally turn over. The Iranian people themselves, they have very highly educated folks. When I was at American University, I had Iranian friends, hugely intelligent folks, right? They need to take that back their own country and set it up on a rights-based constitutional free market system so that they can enjoy the same lifestyle we do.
You know what? I think that finally we have a president that's going to take action in the best interests of all Americans. I think that's the difference. Let's get to the Seattle ruling by that Judge Robart over the weekend. He put the stay in place now at the Department of Justice for Trump's travel ban from these 7 countries. This is not a religious ban. This is a ban against 7 countries that have the highest propensity to train and export terrorists into the United States. That's all this is, and it's only a temporary pause, if you will. Now the Department of Justice is going to submit their information. There's nobody that understands the Constitution better than Congressman Dave Brat does. Is President Trump's actions constitutional or not?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any question on that. And Jonathan Turley is one of the guys I always listen to. He's a very moderate voice on these issues. And there was a little question on the implementation with respect to green cards. That's not play anymore. But President Obama is on the record back with his dealings with Iraq, and then on the constitutional question itself, he said, when it comes to immigration, border, national security, the executive has the powers in the Constitution, and it's pretty open and shut. And then the Democrats will respond and say, well, there's Marbury versus Madison, and there's this, that, and the other, which gives the courts the right to check the executive. That's absolutely true on all the other issues, but not on this one, right? The Constitution is very clear, and the precedent and the history of the country, when it comes to national security threats and securing the border, there the executive, the president, has unique powers. And everyone will find out. Right now, I always say as a kind of a joke, if you ever want to find the truth in this world, just put a $1 bet down with somebody, right? Everyone will have their opinion. But bet your buddy $1 or a soda or something, and then sort it out over the next year. We'll see how it turns out, and guess what the end result's going to be. It's unconstitutional.
Well, look, I don't think there's any...
Well, I misspoke there.
Right.
The Obama stuff was unconstitutional. Trump stuff is constitutional.
Right, so it'll eventually make its way up, but this happened in 1925. President Calvin Coolidge at the time instituted a complete ban on all immigration in. That stood for a very long time. He had that authority. So, at the end of the day, all Trump is trying to do is say, look, we have these 7 countries that are bad actors. We can't vet their people coming in. We're going to stop it for a while until we figure it out, and all this upheaval over it. Totally asinine, in my view. Congressman, going forward here in the next several days, these protests out of control, what do you see happening? I mean, do you think this dissipates over time, or does it sustain itself? What happens here?
Well, I think it's going to dissipate somewhat, but the hard left, right, which is housed out of the Soros funding. Some of the other Black Lives movements are funding the Resist document that I mentioned earlier, and people go Google all this. It's all out there for everybody to find. And then the academic campuses are hotbeds that are not allowing free speech. And so just the usual, they are organized, and the leftist shops are very organized, but the language is so raw, right? I mean, they're trying to say they want to do a Tea Party grassroots kind of thing like conservatives did back in 2010 that was very successful. But the grassroots Republican project had to do with taxed enough already, following the Constitution, restoring the Judeo-Christian tradition. It was entirely policy-driven. And when the protests happened there, you left the park cleaner. There was no swearing and foul languages on placards. And now, if you go back and you look at the march the day after the inauguration, Madonna and Ashley Judd just foul, threatening to blow up the White House. Foul language just on all the placards you look. Just an amazing difference. And so the average Democrat person back home, right, that I go to church with and in my community, they're all fine people. When they see that, they can't go with that, right? It doesn't mesh with their values at all. And so in the end, it's going to dissipate the left. And then they're going to have to the politicians are going to have to make a choice. Do we go with just this crazy shouting project out on the far, far left that isn't rooted in public policy at all? Or do we have to find something new? And so I think in order to win again, they're going to have to do something new. The status quo on the left just is not a winner.
What do you think of the fact that joining the resistance, if you will, to Trump's order on these 7 countries is 5 or 6 high-profile companies like, Uber and Starbucks and some others, saying that they're being injured because they can't find workers without the immigrants from these 7 countries coming in, where we still have all these people unemployed. How does that work?
Well, that's the new interesting part right there, right? The idea that some of these firms get so out over their skis on the politics, and that so few firms, right? Business used to be Republican, right? I mean, going back to Ford and General Motors and IBM, and as America goes, that was the basis for everyone, right? As business goes, that's how America goes. That was kind of the phrase back then. And everybody knew, the CEOs knew, you had to manage the country well and have economic growth for them to do well in business. But now there's a split, and it's about 50-50, and it's just all about cronyism and paying for access to get your lines in the budget. So you get your own little narrow business, gets your special interest. Mm-hmm. And that is not healthy for the country, and you're seeing it. We're not growing like we used to. And so some of these firms now are not even in the middle. Now they're just going hard left because they need these policies to get cheap labor.
Right.
And if you get cheap labor, you get higher profits.
Thank
and that's
you.
True.
That's
but
right.
It's worse off. Yep.
You know what? They tipped their hand, didn't they? Right?
Right.
All this jumping up and down about how we have to look out for the world and how we're being heartless and everything else. When push came to shove, these Pac West companies joined the lawsuit to stop the immigration pause from these 7 countries for one reason. Had nothing to do with politics and they have a big heart or anything else. One thing, cheap labor. They finally showed who they are. We've been saying it since I've been on the air in 2012, right? It's all about cheap labor. That's it. That's why they're upset. They don't care about these people. It's about depressing wages and being able to find cheap slave labor across the globe. That's all this is. We're out of time. I want to thank Dave Brat for being with us. As always, trucking the truth. Congressman, you've got the easiest website ever. What is it?
Yep, just DaveBrat.com. And I need your support right now. Everybody go out to DaveBrat.com and follow me on the Facebook and all the venues and lend your support. And let's just keep it positive, and we will win in the end because we have the ideas that have made the country great, and we're going to do it again.
DaveBrat.com. Thanks, Dave.